Today's our final day on the prophet Micah, and I'm going to be sharing two of the final verses of chapter 7, verses 18 and 19. And these wonderful verses tell us 7 different things about God's character and who God is and what God does on your behalf and mine. So listen to each of them, and then I'm going to briefly touch on each one. Who is a God like you, pardoning iniquity and passing over the transgression of the remnant of your possession? He does not retain his anger forever, because he delights in showing clemency. He will again have compassion upon us. He will tread our iniquities underfoot. You will cast all our sins into the depth of the sea. So these wonderful verses about God's compassion and steadfast love, the totality of God's forgiveness. Boy, if you ever are concerned or burdened thinking God is holding something against you that you did in the past, hear these 7 assertions about God. First of all, that God pardons our iniquity, that God forgives our sins. And this is not like back in Leviticus chapter 16 and verse 20 to 22 where the sins were put on a scapegoat. We've heard from Isaiah chapter 53 verse 12 and seen in the life of Jesus and his death on the cross about how God has laid the burden, the sins of us all on Christ. God pardons our iniquity. The second thing is God passes over our transgression. God forgives us for the times that we've rebelled, that God overlooks when we have offended the Lord. The third thing is that God does not retain his anger forever. This is something we all really can learn from. Many of us struggle with holding on to anger, which then often turns to bitterness and resentment. We let anger, fester almost like lava inside a volcano until it explodes and causes all kinds of damage. God is not like that. God does not retain his anger. God is forgiving, and that leads to number 4, that God delights in clemency and steadfast love, and love that keeps on loving even when the object of one's love sometimes can be challenging, and God knows how challenging loving God's people can be. The fifth thing is that God has compassion on us, and this reflects the gentleness of the Lord that we see in passages like Psalm 103. You remember where that psalm talks about, as a father has compassion on his children, so the Lord has compassion for us. And then we see Jesus in Luke chapter 15 tell a parable about a very compassionate, forgiving father and how he relates to his 2 sons. The 6th assertion about God is that God has tread our iniquities underfoot, literally just stamping them, wiping them out. They're gone. They're not something we have to think about or worry about anymore. And then finally it says that the Lord has cast all our sins into the depths of the sea, something that people who live on Cape Cod can appreciate, how when you throw something in the depth of the sea, it disappears beneath the surface and you just never see it again. What an amazing list of 7 assertions about God's compassion, forgiveness, and steadfast love. I encourage you to sit with Micah chapter 7, verses 18 and 19, and just meditate on the goodness of God to you, and to know that you are pardoned, you are forgiven, and you are loved.